Hi, it's Danielle Lynn. I'm going to talk about something a little difficult today, and that is what can you expect when your loved one does pass away on hospice? What you need to know is you have zero responsibilities but to grieve your loved one, to sit with them, to wait for other loved ones to arrive. When your loved one passes, whether on day shift or after hours, the nurse should come out and she will, and this is hard for some people to understand because they're like, well, my loved one died before you were here. Why are you saying it like they died at 8 o'clock and then the nurse gets there at 9:30 and you're like, why are you making the death time 9:30 when she was clearly passed or he was clearly passed at 8? Unfortunately, what happens is a professional, whether it can't be an LPN, it has to be an RN or a doctor, has to listen for no heartbeat. And once they hear no heartbeat, that is the official time of death. That is what will go on the death certificate. Now, when after the nurse listens, typically what they should do is post-mortem care. Some places, some hospices recommend you wash their whole body. Typically what I do, because most loved ones are taking very good care of them, is I always make sure they have a clean diaper. And I typically say a poem. I have a really great coworker that showed me this. She bought little hearts, and she lets everybody pick out a little stone heart, and that's all polished, and put it on their loved one, and we read a poem, and then they take back their heart and they have something to hold on to for their last moment. Not all hospices do that, but what you can expect when your loved one dies is that the nurse will come out. She will make sure that your loved one looks appropriate. She should ask if you want your loved one to go to the funeral home in what she's wearing or he's wearing, and change them if that's what you want. And then after they do all that and get the patient settled, the company I work at now, I do the death certificate right at the family's house, because some people are very particular. They want the middle name. I don't always know the middle name. I confirm dates because the death certificate has to be perfect. When it comes to death certificates, just so you know, from what I've heard, and you can't go by this, it may be different from state to state. With death certificates, I believe they give you 10 free death certificates, and then you can spend a small fee to get more death certificates. But while I'm in the home, I do post-mortem care. I let the family grieve, and then I do the death certificate. And then a lot of people, their main question is, do I call the funeral home? Or they're worried because they haven't made arrangements yet because they weren't expecting their loved one to pass so quickly. That is nothing to worry about. Take a breath. The nurse will handle that if it's too overwhelming for you. You just tell us what funeral home you want. We will call the funeral home, and we will they will typically, at that point, usually the nurse leaves the home after we've called the funeral home and they said they'll come and pick up. But I typically give a loved one's phone number so the funeral director can call and say what time to expect them. One thing that I learned from another coworker that I think is a really good point is when the funeral home comes and they come in with the stretcher to take your loved one, she would always recommend maybe going in another room. And I never did that. And I've started doing that, and because that's not the last memory you want of your loved one. You don't want to remember them going out the door that way. You just don't want to remember that. Step out of the room. Remember being with them. Remember the good memories. And if you haven't set up arrangements, the funeral directors are more than kind, and they will just get your information and they will call you and, talk about when you can meet to set up arrangements. If you didn't have a funeral home picked because the passing was so sudden, that's not to worry either. We can help you find a funeral home, okay? So I hope this helped. I know it's a very difficult topic. It's a painful topic, but it's a lot. I mean, it's, when I get the calls overnight that a loved one has passed, usually the first question is, what do we do? And I usually say, absolutely nothing. You spend time with your loved one. I'll take care of it all when I get there. And that's the way it should be. If it's any other way, you didn't have a good hospice. I'm sorry to say that. Take care. Peace out.